Welcome to a football show. Paul Kuharsky, Braden, Gall, brought to you by Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. After, Paul, what was maybe the worst game in how many years at Nissan Stadium?
Come on. You got to be careful about saying it because there have been a lot of worse games. I'm sure we could look back to something earlier this season that was probably comparable. So it's very easy to have recency bias on things like this. I mean, they play a lot of horrible games. They played a lot of horrible games in the last 3 years, and they've played a lot of horrible games in their existence. So I am
11 sacks, Marcus Mariota to the Ravens. 11 was it 11 sacks? I believe
sounds right. I don't have great memory, game specific memory, but I do have great broad memory to know better than to rank something the worst 2 days or a day after witnessing
it. Fair enough. If you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. We will have time for you. Predemption already in here, and shout out to all you folks who are involved. So here's the thing, though. From a if you put all the context around this one, which is the offense in the red zone against one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not, maybe some thought that it was the worst team in the NFL. Had the Titans beaten them, it might have been one of the worst teams. I would say 65-70% of the stadium was empty. It was dreary and rainy, and they scored a grand total of 16 points between the two teams late in the season, where both teams are now officially eliminated from the playoffs with 4 games still to go. You sort of put all that together, and I agree with you. It is dangerous to make hyperbolic statements about it being the worst, but it's among the worst that I can remember seeing in that stadium. And,
they are not the worst team in the league by record or by draft position. They're 2-win teams in the Giants and in the Raiders. And I think they're 6th in the draft order, behind those two teams and in tiebreakers with others, including the Jags, who are ahead of them in the draft order. But I said in my column off the game, I think if you put them on a neutral field against anybody in the league right now, I think you can make the case that they'd be hard pressed to beat anybody after the last 2 weeks and how pitiful they've been. And we talked last week about the Washington game erasing a lot of the good that they'd done in the weeks before, and I think this doubled down on that pretty much. Yeah. I don't see anything really to hang your hat on. Had to ask questions to Callahan about job security today, and I see Eddie asking here, why do we ask coaches of struggling teams whether they're worried about getting fired? They all give the same canned response. Eddie, just because sometimes what somebody's going to say doesn't mean it's not worth asking them. You kind of get it on the record. You get on the record that the question's been asked. You get on the record the answer to it. You set a timeline. If he is in fact fired, you can say 4 weeks before he was fired, he expressed, this, and this. It's just kind of part of the way the sausage is made.
Good stuff on paulkuharsky.com. Of course, you got the game recap and you got the betting field scouting report, but you also have sort of a job security temp check, as it were. And it's not just about Brian Callahan. It's really about everybody in the front office all the way down. But frankly, and Jeff Simmons echoed this sentiment. Normally I would listen to this and I'd go, I don't love the name on the back of the jersey comment in theory in general. But everyone right now in the NFL, it's different than other sports. They're not guaranteed contracts. All these guys are playing for a lot of these guys, not all of them. A lot of these guys are playing for their jobs. And so when you're eliminated from the playoffs, you technically have nothing else to play for other than probably earning yourself a contract next year, or for somebody else, put good tape out there, etc. I don't care about motivation.
I'm not sure he understands the cliche, Braden. I don't know if he knew that he was saying play for yourself as opposed to play for the team, or if he was butchering the cliche. I used it as the kicker on my story, but I'm not sure if Jeff Simmons knows. I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving him enough benefit of the doubt. He says you play for the name on the back of your jersey. That's not something.
It's very rare you hear that.
A team leader generally touts at any stage of no matter how bad a season. So I used it kind of symbolically as to what a cluster things are that guys are reduced to saying something like that, or that a team leader is so confused that that's what he thinks he should be saying at this stage.
And going back to Eddie, who asked about Andrew Burnett, the Predators coach, who also is very securely on the hot seat, way more so, I would say, than even Brian Callahan. Basically, that they were asked the same question and given the same answer. And to your point, Paul, there's a sort of a motivation there behind getting someone on the record. But also, I think it's an opportunity for Andrew Burnett specifically, and I don't know if Callahan's there yet, but it's an opportunity for you to, in his case, make the case why he still deserves to be the guy. Be honest. Fall on the sword a little bit, take some ownership of the situation, and then defend yourself and politic a little bit. And I'm not saying it's going to keep your job or cost you a job, but you can give the fans some transparency and some honesty. And generally, Brian Callahan has been pretty good about that. I don't think he started his press conference in the post game, very well, but I think he kind of picked up on the fact that he had done that and fixed it pretty quickly. But it's interesting that, Paul, it seems to me that you feel like Sunday, while we joke about worst game ever in Nissan Stadium and the combined records of the two teams, etc. I mean, it does feel like you have a slightly different perception of the power structure and the people that are in charge, maybe today, than you have had all season. Is that fair to say?
I just and that's what I wrote in the job security check-in, and I don't think that they should be making moves, really, barring unforeseen craziness in these last 4 games. I think there's something to be said for continuity. And I don't know who you're going to get and all of that. But I did come out of that game saying, for the first time, being like, maybe he is over his head. I mean, to say there are a lot of positives, and he went again to that today and said, I understand how that's poorly received, and I maybe didn't phrase it well. We emphasized a lot of things during the week, and we got a lot of those things. We got 2 takeaways. We did far better stopping the run than we had a week ago, and he listed a couple other things, but they're just so unimportant in the big picture compared to not scoring touchdowns. And he said 3 or 4 plays, if we execute better, it's a 2010 game. But that is not an unusual thing. That is the story of so many NFL games and the difference between winning and losing them. So the Titans have shrunk the margin from getting destroyed in Detroit or losing badly to Buffalo, where against one of the other worst teams in the league, they're 3 or 4 plays away from winning. I'm not taking that as a big step. I'm taking that as an awful thing that your quarterback on his quick second read can't see the open tight end that throws to the covered ones. You've got to have your quarterback more ready for that. That your star receiver runs out of bounds instead of planting and trying to get a first down on a 3rd and 5 and settles for a 2-yard gain. And on another occasion goes out of bounds when he had room to run. That these handful of plays he's talking about, the guys don't look, they're not a winning football team on those plays against a terrible football team. And that's just a high level indictment.
Yeah. And clearly Calvin Ridley, acknowledging instantaneously in his body language that he made the mistake. So I agree. Now the penalties were down. To your point, you can sell margin.
Yeah, that was another thing.
And it wasn't the top 8 worst special teams game of the season. It wasn't one of their worst 8 games of the season in terms of special teams. But these are marginal things that don't mean anything to fans when you're playing. Now, here's the deal. Malik Willis, Tyler Huntley, Joe Flacco, and Mac Jones, all 4 backup quarterbacks this year. They beat Tyler Huntley. They lost to the other 3. So it's not that they haven't been given opportunities with the schedule either. I mean, they had so many opportunities on Sunday to win that game. And here's the other thing that was frustrating to me if I'm a fan. The thing about the New England game, Paul, and I think you'd agree with this, is that they looked like and acted like the better team most of the game. It doesn't mean that there weren't some moments where New England played well or Drake May did something special or, it's football. They're all professionals. The margins are very small. But they looked like the better team. They came out and played like the better team, and they won the game. They started that way yesterday. They started that way by saying, screw you guys, we're going to run 8 straight times. We're going to line up, and we're going to bully you because we're better. And they acted like it. And then as the game goes on, it's like they forgot all of that confidence. They lost everything throughout the course of that 60 minutes. And I'm not even going to blame NWI for the drop pass. That would have been a very difficult catch in the back of the end zone. But 2 chances inside the 10 with like 6 snaps, and you don't like the play calling, you don't like the execution, you don't like the diagnostics from the quarterback, you don't like the execution from the receiver. Like it felt like it was a major step back because of what looked like the psyche evolving throughout the course of the 60 minutes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is little bit misleading. They've had 1.7 trips into the red zone per game in the last 3 games. Now, against Houston, they did what they're best at, and they just avoided the red zone and threw over it. They had a 38-yard touchdown, a 70-yard touchdown. And this team's best with explosives that avoid. But I think Callahan looks the shakiest down in the red zone with the play calling. This is at least the second time where they've been down there in close range and abandoned the run in a game where they've run satisfactorily. 3 plays from the 2, and you don't hand it off to Pollard, your best player, once. I don't get that. The throw to NWI is fine. It slipped a little bit on Levis. It turned into a very, very tough catch. If you look at that, and I think it's asking for a lot. When his back foot hits, NWI is open. I think maybe a harder, faster throw. He's got a lot of space with the defender behind him, but also Calvin Ridley's breaking open to his left in the middle of the field and could have caught it and easily ran in. It's easy to freeze frame something and second guess it. Right. That's easy for us to do that, but that's supposed to be kind of the processing that happens for a big league quarterback. Yep. And it didn't happen. I didn't think it was a killer game for Will Levis, but I didn't think, he didn't get help in a couple of these situations we're talking about, and he didn't make a winning play. He also, I don't think, made a losing play, though. You can argue not finding Chig on that touchdown thing was a losing play. And the defense, look, it's hard to complain about a defense that holds a team to 10 points, but there's another example where there's one drive on which they had to make a stop, and it's the one drive where they didn't make the stop.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you've alluded to like the Jets plays right down the sideline on those throws from Aaron Rodgers, and I don't disagree with your basic point, but when you 2 turnovers, less than 300 yards, 70 yards rushing.
No, solid effort.
Eventually, they're like giving up 1 touchdown in the game. You can't really get too mad at them for that. Like, hey, you need to hold a team to less than 9 so that we can win the game. That's not fair.
And some of the defensive guys finally said something about the offense. Daryl Baker said something about 6 points or 10 points. He said, I don't know which side, but something about the low scoring element. And Simmons said he's tired of seeing Levis, on his back. And, I don't think that's fracturing. I think that's honesty. And Callahan had a good answer to that. That's obvious. We all see that. And I don't have any beef with guys talking about obvious things that are going on with their football team.
Well, we'll get into the bigger picture conversation in just a moment, but we'll hear from Peter Skoronski, who today had some thoughts to say about all of this stuff. So we'll get to that in just a second. However, if you Titans fans need to drink, I understand. And you can go to Sinkers Beverages. You can search Uber Eats, and you can have that booze delivered directly to your house. They have been serving the East Nashville community for almost 40 years, and they have won 4 consecutive awards as the #1 liquor store in the city. I shouldn't have to tell anybody anything else than that. But wait, there's more, Paul. Thank you for asking. There is a craft beer retail fridge that is also award-winning with every single fantastic beer locally brewed here in Nashville, Tennessee. So you can get all your favorites. If you are like me and you've tried most of them, whether it's East Nashville Beer Works or Bearded Iris or Tennessee Brew Works or Jackalope or Black Abbey or Yazoo, it doesn't matter. They're all there, and you can get them there. They're fantastic. You can also get microbrews from around the region as well if you like good people or stuff from Asheville. So there's a reason they won an award. There's a reason they continue to win awards. And they did a great job, of course, with my Thanksgiving 2 weeks ago, and it was wonderful. So do appreciate Sinkers for being such a great, local, amazing sponsor. And, of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, the best brisket in the city. Obviously, I ate turkey sandwiches for about 8 straight days, and it was delicious, and it was a huge hit with the family. But make sure you go check them out. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., open Wednesday through Sunday. You can get that meat and those delicious side items every single day, 11 to 3 because they don't put it under a warming lamp, Paul, and just have it sit there for the night crowd. They sell it until it's gone, and then when it's gone, they're done. So make sure you support good local businesses, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages. All right, let's hear from Peter Skronsky first and sort of jump us off into this conversation. All right, so do you want to set up the question here that was asked of Peter?
Yeah, I just basically on this job security index story I was doing, I asked him, based on everything that's gone, how it's gone, how do you feel about the faith level in Callahan and the front office?
All right, here's the response.
Yeah, I think everyone understands, our goal here and the common goal, and appreciates coach and bringing us to that. And, the results aren't showing right now, but it's part of a bigger purpose, I think, and building towards the future at this point. So it's continuing to work towards a common goal and his vision. And I think guys are still driven and bought into that. And results aren't there yet. Not everyone start every year, their first year, with an unbelievably good record and stuff like that. You have to build to it. So I think guys are just kind of trusting that plan and building to it.
All right, there you go. So let me ask you a different question, but it's around the same conversation. And if old friend of the pod, Jimmy Wyatt, is putting this in his story officially on Titans Online, then there's something to it. He basically said there's a whole different tone in the locker room. Did you, first of all, after the game, because, look, this team has dealt with a lot of adversity. They've dealt with a lot of disappointment. So first and foremost, did you feel that it was any different? I know we've asked this question before, so I understand, but when the official team employee can write that and feels comfortable writing that, it does tell you where people are at. So I'm curious about your observation.
Well, I think it's different in the things that I mentioned, that Jeff Simmons is willing to say something about Will Levis getting sacked, which is on the other side of the ball, that Daryl Baker's willing to say something about either, if we hold them to 10, that should be enough, or them scoring 6 isn't enough. The defense talking about the offense is something that we have not seen. And so, that in and of itself is a different tone in the locker room.
So then let me ask you this, going back to your history then. And I am dealing with this currently as somebody covering the Preds, and it takes a long time for me personally. I am very conservative when it comes to firing coaches, just in general. I always kind of feel like, look, these are tough jobs. They are really difficult. Context is very important, and that generally smart people who have shown that they are capable of doing something can generally solve problems, get themselves out of issues if given enough time and patience. Obviously, in professional sports, we don't always have that. So when do you feel like again, this goes back to why you kind of come around on this, and you have not changed your opinion on Brian Callahan. He should be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yes.
But talk us through the process of why your mind starts to go into those places. When in the past, maybe, have you been around a coach where you realized, okay, I'm starting to change my opinion? I don't know. Would you call yourself conservative when it comes to the hot seat conversation? I am. I tend to be on the give them time side of the equation on all things.
Yeah, I think I'm very conservative on that side. I can't remember. And I've been at it a long time. And as I say, I don't have a good memory for such things. I think even the game that ended up getting Craig Aukerman fired, and I had a lot of beef with Craig Aukerman, the Mike Vrabel's special teams coach, the game where Ryan Stonehouse got his leg, all kinds of messed up. I wrote, if one more thing happens with this guy, it's got to be the end of him. And he got fired the next morning. Colt Anderson, I've said should be. I think he should have been fired during the season. I think he needs to be fired after the season. I expect he will be fired after the season. If he's not, something unreasonable is going on. But I think that's probably about as far as I've taken it. Maybe after a season, I've said, a position coach here or there could go. I don't remember. I don't think I've ever called for a head coach in Titans history. I'm certain I haven't called for him to go. I think Munchak, I think his contract may have been up there, and I was like, could go either way. But I didn't think he'd done a great job by any means. And, I didn't think that Wisenhunt was going to make it, after that year. It was pretty obvious, if he made it through a second year, that was going to be it. I don't take it lightly by any means. We've got personal relationships with most of these people. Not that plays a huge role in it. I thought that game was a game that Titans should have won, should have had a path to win, should have reacted better to the situations that they were in, and that they had, 3 snaps from the 2 and 4 snaps from inside the 5 and 6 snaps from inside the 10 and 11 snaps from inside the 20 and couldn't do anything with it. With your offensive guy, with an offense that has been better, just really left me with a bad feeling about Brian Callahan coming off of that game. I thought maybe his worst of the season for his responsibilities, even if his people are underachieving. And I don't think he's got a good enough roster given to him, and that's right. Part of the issue here. But really, and I talked about this last night from the stadium, I'm presuming he's going to be in this job. To me, a giant offseason in terms of self-reflection, in terms of figuring out, in terms of self-admission that I wasn't good enough or ready enough in areas X, Y, and Z. And I've got to hit the books, study up on what I needed to do better there, why I maybe wasn't ready, watch, these 4 coaches who are good at this or that or whatever, and really come back recharged, refreshed, and educated on a different level after knowing what I failed to do as a rookie.
Ed says that you've been more willing to give Callahan some slack because of how transparent and good he is with the media. I do think that inherently can happen even subconsciously. If you treat people with respect, you're going to get more respect in return. I think that's something we all teach our children. But, eventually this is a results-oriented business and you got to get results. And if he doesn't get them, then people will feel as such. I just think it's way too early to make any grand sweeping gestures. But my entire conversation about Will Levis, PK, has been if things continue to trend in this direction after the Chargers, after the Vikings, after the Texans, if they continue to trend in this direction and he keeps taking small steps, then we can have a conversation about how they need to make the team better around him. Well, then, while the last 2 games have not been because of Will Levis, he has not gotten better. And the team has gotten significantly worse over the last 2 games. And so if that's the measurement, which is show us progress even in defeat, you're not even doing that now. And that's a concern.
And for a time, it looked like they were, and if they finished on an upswing, that was going to be big. And they could finish on a 4-game upswing here, but it wouldn't have meant, it won't mean as much as the potential upswing they could have had coming off that Houston game. So it should have been a 7-game upswing, potentially a 9-game upswing. You could have looked at the Chargers game and the Vikings game in a good light if they went and did that, over the course of 9 games. But here's another reason I'm reluctant to call for his head. And I talked about this relatively early in the season. What's the date on this tweet? October 25th. I found 28 NFL coaches since the 1970 merger that won 4 games or fewer in their first season. And of those 8 included Dick Vermeil, Tom Coughlin, Jimmy Johnson, Marv Levy, Bill Parcells, Don Coryell, and Bill Walsh.
It's a lot of champions.
A bunch of Hall of Fame guys. Now, the more recent guys, not as good. Zach Taylor, Raheem Morris, Robert Saleh, Steve Spagnuolo, Gus Bradley, Hugh Jackson, Jim Schwartz, Pat Shurmur, Jay Gruden, Mike Nolan. You don't want that list. But there are guys who have started slowly and gotten good.
Have any of the good ones on that list taken a job since 1990?
Most recent would be Coughlin, right? Who's not that far.
When did he take the Giants job? 03 or something like that? 04?
Yeah,
somewhere in there?
I don't know, but he's out of the league for what? 8 years?
20 years ago.
All right. But there's evidence that you can start badly and get good. So the idea that there's no chance in hell that this guy can be good, I'm telling you, there's evidence right there that I put that tweet in the story that I wrote today, that it is possible that a guy it gets good and can have a bumpy first year based on maybe not being as good as he gets and not having the roster that he ultimately gets. This is one thing that this came up last night again. Like, I think there's too much. This goes with players as well. Like last year, people were hell-bent that Skoronski just stunk. And Skoronski's never going to be like the caliber of the 11th pick in the draft we think that should be. But Skoronski's gotten substantially better. And not enough players, I'm not saying that, not enough players on the Titans roster have gotten better. But Calvin Ridley, who made 2 bonehead plays yesterday, but he makes explosive plays pretty regularly for the Titans now. After the first month of the season, we were ready to say Calvin Ridley's a bust. So it is possible, and it happens pretty regularly, not regularly enough in Tennessee over the last 3 years, that people get better. So you have to allow that. If everything were static, and this Titans board was written up on this Titans team was written up in pen on something indelible, and that was it. Well, then you wouldn't play and you wouldn't go forward, and the Chiefs would be permanent champions. Stuff is allowed to change.
They're using too much black magic right now. The Chiefs. I don't know how. I don't know what deal they made with Satan, but
it's ridiculous. I don't think they're winning this thing because they're going to face several good teams in a row. I know they're going to be at home, but one of these things, a field goal off the upright or a blocked, one of these things is not going to go that direction.
Well, Trevor has a great comment. I'm going to ask you that in just a second. But a lot of times you can cherry pick stats, right? You can be like, look, this team is terrible at takeaways on defense. They're terrible in the red zone on defense. They're terrible in the red zone on offense. They cannot protect the quarterback. The special teams are atrocious. Too many penalties. Like, I can keep going. It's a long list. So on the other side, if we include Rand in this conversation and Brian Callahan and just say the entire picture, what are you hanging your hat on? That is the thing that's either there's been a lot of progress or done extremely well. Tony Pollard's been very good. He was an offseason signing by Rand Carthon. Brian Callahan has used him a lot very well, and he's been very productive every time he's been used. He hasn't gotten better since week 1, though. Not that I expect him to, but like
the run blocking for him hasn't gotten any attention either. So that's the same offensive line. That's the same offensive line that the pass protection's been so bad with. That hasn't gotten any notice for making the room for Tony Pollard to be a good running back. So I think that's a factor. I don't want to be excuse making for the Titans. Ridley's gotten better. He still makes these bonehead plays. And I think
he's a 30-year-old veteran, though. Like, I don't expect him to change his game at 30 years old. He kind of is what he is.
Yeah. And NWI's been a revelation who's really taken it to the next level. I think Brownlee's gotten steadily better.
Okay.
And he's the guy. Latham now has taken a 3-game reversal, and that's disappointing that he's gone in that direction. So there's somebody in the opposite realm. But no, I mean, there's not a long list of guys who have gotten better, but we were saying the same thing about Vrabel in his last 2 years. So, and I think Vrabel was a better coach at this. I think some of it speaks to personnel that's not capable of getting better. Some of it's coaching, but some of it's who's being coached.
What I'm trying to figure out, and maybe I'm not articulating it well, which is identity is a very overused word, right? It just kind of is. And Brian Callahan, to his credit, said early in the camp and at the beginning of the season, like, we don't want to be too arrogant to be married to a thing that we don't do well, and we need to be able to adapt, which I think is a very savvy and sort of evolved way of looking at the game and the job. But ultimately, if you're talking about like specific parts of the game and of the organization, and you're looking at the guys that are most responsible for all of that, Rand and Brian in this case, what is the thing that definitively you can say has either gotten better or is very good? And I agree with you. The run blocking has been very good. You could say, to your point, this draft class, this most recent draft class, looks like it could be a pretty good draft class for Rand Carthon. Outside of that, the free agent class, unsure. Some injuries there are a factor, but injuries are part of this. And if it was Mike Vrabel was the head coach, we'd be screaming about the injuries. We know that Denard Wilson wants to have some like roll up press man coverage and get a lot of pressure from a lot of places. Well, has that worked? Has that been their identity? Injuries to the secondary, okay, fine, but how many times can we keep making an excuse for them not finding the thing that works? And so I just don't. I'm not suggesting they make any changes. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. You're not either. But if you are a fan and you are looking for a piece of this big, giant moving machine and puzzle that you say, that's been very good, that's gotten better, that's our identity moving forward, that's what we should build around. They don't know if the quarterback is the guy they can build around. I think the run blocking might be the best answer to that question, to be honest with you.
And still, I mean, the run blocking is not big enough to build around if it comes with terrible pass protection. And so, right tackle's a priority and right guard might be. You've got some worries about, I do anyway, Cushenberry's timetable to be back to, the guy that they gave the big contract to. $180 million I counted up last night of guaranteed money to 11 guys. Have they got $180 million guaranteed production? Not even close. You need big time splash players. They got Kenneth Murray, who we all said Kenneth Murray can't cover. And they said, oh, we're going to really put Kenneth Murray in situations where we can emphasize what Kenneth Murray's good at. He's going to come forward and be in the backfield and everything. Kenneth Murray's been exactly what we expected Kenneth Murray. They outsmart themselves there and think that they can do something that they can't, because an inside linebacker has certain responsibilities that you can't get him out of.
Well, and that sort of leads to Trevor's question, which is sort of like, to your point about player acquisition, the roster's not that great. How much faith is there that Rand Carthon can fix the roster? Though my faith is dwindling as the season unfolds, from Trevor. So we can go ahead and answer that one. I guess you kind of are already answering that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have great faith in Rand Carthon. I think he's drafted, really the last draft was a combo deal. You don't know how much. My perception, and we've covered this, our joint perception is that everybody was in pretty good agreement on Will Levis. Jury's out on that. Skoronski's drafted too high as a guard there. Could be a long-term good player, but you want better value at 11. And nothing great out of that draft. This draft could have three very good players. Brownlee's going to be a very good player. We know that. Latham should be a very good player and had a bad first game and a very good stretch. In the last three games, he's kind of regressed.
He's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's going to be fine. And Sweat, I think will get a lot better after one season in the league in terms of knowing what he's kind of got to do to maintain himself, even though he's done a good job with the fitness stuff. But I think he'll become more of a presence in the pass game, and he's a handful. So there are three good guys in that draft. I think Rand kind of spoke about late round picks being of influence when Jaquan Jackson is getting benched, and 2 7th rounders that none of us really would have expected much from, but for Rand touting them, haven't done anything. And they're going into the second draft in a row without a third, which is a problem. I think Carthon's got a chance as a drafter, but he didn't have enough picks.
Yeah, got to get some picks. Well, they're 3-10 currently, of course, eliminated from the playoffs with 4 games to go, which is highly unusual. With the win over New England also at 3-10, they're going to be ahead of them in the draft. Jacksonville technically is ahead of them in the draft right now, but that also obviously could change should they lose to Jacksonville a little bit later on. They have the win over the Jets, or they have the loss to the Jets, which actually benefits them in the draft conversation. So, but as of right now, there are only 2 teams in the NFL that have a worse record, and that's the Raiders and the Giants. And we've seen how the Giants' dysfunction is like nearing new levels of dysfunction.
I think you'd rather be the Titans than the Giants, probably.
Yeah. I will say though, and this is the thing that mostly because I know it's like a touch point for you, like a lightning rod for you personally. And no, I'm not talking about where to find Yellowstone. But what I think is interesting is I continue to come around and hear from people on this, and I personally am coming around on this, that if you are picking 4th, 5th, 6th, I think you could do a lot worse than Shedeur Sanders.
I don't think he's going to be there.
He may not.
I think Shedeur Sanders goes in the top 3 picks, probably first overall, presuming that it's not the Jags or somebody that's got a team, that's got New England who just got Drake May. But if the team that's first has a quarterback, I envision them trading out to somebody that needs a quarterback. I mean, the quarterback desperation factor. Yeah, I would imagine so. The quarterback needy teams always wind up valuing the quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks always get better and better looking the more time goes on. By the way, I still don't have a definitive answer on where the hell to watch Yellowstone. I got half Paramount and half Peacock. And never has a big TV show in its final 6 episodes been a quandary as to where to find it.
Well, it's funny. I have both Paramount Plus. I have Paramount Plus and Peacock and YouTube.
I do too.
And YouTube TV. And we go to, so here's the thing. So I think what you have to do is to get, like, you can watch it on YouTube TV, which I think is, what is it on FX or something? I don't know. Well, no, it's on regular television, like whatever your regular Xfinity or DirecTV or whatever your regular television is. No free shouts. It's on. And so like last night, I'm flipping around in the middle of the football game, and I see it pop up on my thing, but I haven't watched any of these episodes this year, even though I've watched my stories, because let's be honest, it's a soap opera for grown men. It's not very good, but like, it's also something I watch. So my
wife likes it.
I will acknowledge that I like it, but I also recognize that like, it's me watching, like, it's like daytime TV for grown men is how I feel about it. There's a lot of plot holes, and
I think you're underrating it.
But I go, well, I mean, dude, how many times are there murders and like just there's not even a police investigation? Like, stop.
Like, the guy runs the town. I think you're missing out on who runs the town. The Duttons run the town.
Runs the state.
But we don't need to get this far into the weeds. I just want to know where to see it.
Well, but I saw it on like the YouTube TV, like on my cable box, let's call it. And it was like halfway through, and I was like, well, I haven't watched any of the other episodes, so I'm not going to go ahead and click on this now. But I went and hit record, right, to just make sure I can get it in my queue. Well, you can go to like, I think it's on either Peacock or YouTube or Paramount, and you have to pay like $1.99 to get the urgent one, like the day of. And I was like, I looked at my wife and I was like, it's not that good of a show. Like, we like it.
I don't need it the day of. I'll take all 6 of them after it's over. Right. But I still need to know where to find it. And nobody can give a definitive answer.
I agree. Talk about Titans red zone offense. Taylor Sheridan running the same play in the red zone every show. Every show he does is like the same show. Anyway, it's pretty good. Anyway, all right. I don't know why I got off on that tangent. But you are incredulous about the Paramount Plus thing, and I love it. That's my favorite PK on the PK podcast is the incredulous PK. Sometimes it's a fan talking about taking a play out of a game. Sometimes it's Shedeur Sanders. Sometimes it's Yellowstone. It is my favorite version of you.
That's me.
It's my favorite version. And I do think that the longer this Levis thing goes, where the offense doesn't feel like it's making any strides, and yes, I agree, it wasn't Levis's fault per se that they lost the game. He didn't make a big mistake to cost him a game. Great players sometimes make other people around them great too.
Oh, absolutely.
And he missed Chig. He missed this. He missed that. I give him credit for fighting through the injury. The play call at the end of the first half is just like, I'm not even kidding about this, PK, and I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but even Titans employees behind us in the press box were like, what are you doing? Like, out loud. Why are you calling that play? And so you didn't give him any help yesterday, making him take a shot on shooting up his arm when it's hurt and banged up, and then asking him to go out there and play. You're not helping your guy. But the progress they've given everything back in the last 2 games that they earned any goodwill. It was bad last week. It's even worse now. And it's why I'm like letting my mind drift to Shedeur Sanders. Like, covering Shedeur Sanders in camp next year would be unbelievable.
Just on the red zone thing, I use these numbers in the piece that I hope people will go read, but they are less than 1% better than Mike Vrabel's awful red zone team last year. This is one of the many things that Brian Callahan was hired to fix offensively. And this is 30 percentage points worse than the 2019 team that got in the end zone 77% of the time in the red zone, which is a phenomenal number. They're 30 percentage points worse than that.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's not bad. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Excellent food and, of course, excellent beverages. If you want a great bottle of wine, great bottle of champagne, I don't know anything about that stuff, but I know who to ask. I go into Sinkers Beverages. I talk to my guy, Grant. I turn to the left, and they've got a whole rack there, PK, of staff picks. They've got an entire rack, all different price points, so you don't have to go in there and break the bank. But if you need a nice bottle of wine for dinner, you want to impress somebody, pop into that store, turn left. It's right there on the left side. You can check out all the great wine selections that they have. As someone who knows a lot about bourbon and a lot about beer and very little about wine, I appreciate them. So make sure you go check them out. And of course, if you are watching a Titans game, perhaps on a Sunday or, whatever, watching the free agents, the major, if you're a Yankees fan and watching free agency in baseball and you need a beverage, make sure you search on Uber Eats Sinkers Beverages, and they'll deliver the booze directly to your house. And if you need me to loan the Yankees an extra $765 million, I can do that.
If you're a Yankees fan, you're going to be just fine. And Braden's going to be incredibly disappointed. He's going to get 2 or 3 good years. They need to surround him with better players. But 8 years from now, 9 years from now, you're going to have a guy in the lineup and you're going to be like, oh, my God, we can't get out from under this guy. Just like the Yankees have now with Giancarlo Stanton. And you're going to be like, this is an albatross. And we're never going to get out from under it. It's endless. It's endless. And it's going to be miserable for you.
Between now and that 7, I'll give you 7 years. Do the Mets win a World Series?
No, they're the Mets.
The answer is no. Do they get to the World Series?
No,
Probably.
they're the Mets.
Probably. If they get to the World Series,
Dodgers are in
fine.
the National League. You know the Dodgers are in the National League.
All those contracts are going to get bad too. Going to be bad too. I'm just saying. I'm bathing in Yankee tears today. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know why Yankee people are crying. The Yankees could go out, get 3 good players now. They only had 2 good hitters. Now they can get 3 or 4 good hitters. Get another pitcher, and not have contracts that are 15 years long.
But when have the Mets ever had a long-term contract come back to bite him in the ass? It's never happened.
Oh, never. When have the Mets done anything that bites
Dude,
them in the ass?
This is what's so funny about this, and it's like Preds fans right now who are furious, Titans fans upset with the spending in the free agency in the offseason. It's like, it's not my money. I don't care.
I'm hearing that from every Mets fan I know today. It's not your money. But
No,
listen, it not
fans,
being your money is fine, but the money affects the limitations of a team. So it's going to limit your team in the future, whether it's your money or not.
Much like Preds fans, all I care about, Paul, is winning the offseason. Okay, that's all I care about.
Congratulations, you're winning the offseason.
Yeah, Preds were the offseason champions.
Titans won the offseason also.
Yeah, exactly. Those are my favorite teams. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course. Go check that out. Shotgun Willie, by the way, Pitmaster Bill, huge baseball guy. Huge baseball guy.
Loves the Yankees.
And also hates the Yankees. So he's an Astros guy. So shout out to the Astros. What percentage do you chalk it up to being divisional game, if at all? A lot of these games have been weird this year, league-wide. Could be wrong. What do you think about Austin's theory there?
Yeah, divisional games get weird. So, I mean, if you're going to chalk this up to division, then you chalk up the Houston game to division. So they won a game by fluke and they lose a game by fluke, and it's a wash.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. All right. So as the season moves along and with just 4 to go, is there any? How would you define? I want you to define success moving forward and define progress, because we saw some of it. It's now all been removed again, and now they're back on the hook to have to accomplish something over the next 4 games. Do you buy into the? I don't know if this is maybe a silly theory, but it's not like there was any pressure on the team, but the outside people aren't paying attention. The media is not paying attention. They're eliminated from the playoffs. Jeffrey Simmons says they're playing for themselves, if that's what he meant. If there's a, like it, I don't know if that makes it easier or not. But the apathy in the stadium on Sunday was bad. And I've seen a lot of this from folks. I've heard a lot of this in text threads and group threads from Titans fans. I've got some family members who are Titans fans, and and this is what the Predators are dealing with right now. Because I think Tuesday night they did not fire Andrew Burnett on Sunday, Paul. Tuesday night they're going to be at home, and if there are a lot of empty seats and the ones who are filled are loud and obnoxious and booing and upset, embarrassment is not a good brand for professional sports teams. It does not affect the NFL as much, because they're a little bit more insulated financially, the ownership groups are. But I don't know what progress is supposed to look like, because apathy is a major problem. And when fans start speaking with their wallets, that's what starts to change people's opinions about making changes. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on apathy?
I don't know. On the box score, it says, 67,000.
Does it really?
distributed. It's a tickets distributed thing. Paid attendance, it says 61,644. So if that in fact is the paid attendance, then they technically, it's not good that people don't show up. But if they sold that much, then, I hope they care that people don't come. But what they care most about is the paid attendance. And so, but people bought those as season tickets. Suckers. They got your money.
Does paid attendance also include the amount of tickets that they are distributing to partners who technically do pay for that access, right? Corporate sponsorships and stuff like that. Are they counting that as paid, in your opinion? Because
I can't everything imagine that's paid that there's a nickel that goes towards to make themselves look as good as they can. But for all the crap that we give them over visiting fans coming in, they sure wish the Jaguars had a traveling fan base and were any good. Cincinnati's got something to watch, even though they have come up far short of expectations. How many people driving south from Ohio for that? More than were Jacksonville, none.
Yeah,
but not anything comparable to a lot of the teams that we've seen this year. And then Houston home game, as a finale, maybe they get a little bit because it's playoff thing, but Texans probably are clinched up. I think the last home games are going to be pretty ugly. Maybe not as ugly as yesterday, but pretty ugly.
I tend to agree. And so if you're saying 61,000 paid, I don't know about you, but from my vantage point, it looked like it was about 35 to 40% full. It got a little bit fuller as in the first half, and then it kind of started to thin out in the second half as expected. Also, the weather didn't help, but that's 30,000 paid tickets that didn't show up. Maybe
I struggle with that. I don't know how you feel. Like I've been a season ticket holder, 2 seasons of something in my life. Vanderbilt basketball, when I lived near there, they were pretty good, and we went. I don't like to pay for stuff and then not use it. These people maybe are in a different financial stratosphere than I am, but it would really take something for me to pay and not go, but I wouldn't have been stupid enough to pay. So,
I will say this. So I'm a season ticket holder of, the only thing I've been a season ticket holder of is Nashville SC. I've been there since I bought them when they were USL tickets, and I've had 2 of them. I pay a grand total, Paul, of 1 kid and 1 adult ticket in the family section, which is a grand total of like $500 for the year. So I am not invested financially in missing a few games, 17 home games, bad team, also firing its coach, like a lot going on with SC. A lot of those summer Saturdays, you're on vacations or you got kids events you got to be at.
Can you offload them for anything or no?
You can, but a lot of times I'm giving them to people just because I know hey, so-and-so wants to go or so-and-so wants to go. So I'll sell a couple, but really it's like, no, I'm going to give them away to listeners or I'll give them away to my friends or family that want to go. And then we'll probably go to like half. We'll probably get to about 8 or 9 games, maybe 10 matches on the season total. But again, I am invested at all of like $31 a game. Total.
Yeah, at that level, it's a different deal. And that was my Vanderbilt investment as well. And we really liked walking down the street and going to see Shane Foster play, Yeah. It's a different deal now and live in a different world, geographically speaking. But if I was paying big bucks for NFL or NHL tickets, I would struggle not to go. That's why I would never get to the level of doing that. Or you do it as an investment, but then you're in it for the long play. And a year like that, you're taking a bath.
Yeah, well,
but you might have gotten enough for your Packers tickets. If you skip that game, you make enough on that not going to the Jags game and eating them or giving them to charity where some kids want to go to the game doesn't hurt you much in the pocketbook.
The amount of money we spent for the Packers tickets is offensive to me as someone in charge of my family's finances. It's offensive to me. But we have been on the waiting list for like 11 years. My grandfather has died since getting on the waiting list for Packers season tickets. And for the club seats, I think we're like next year we get them. And it's an investment. You get the 4 tickets. You spend like whatever. It's actually not super expensive. It's like $5 or $6 grand a year. and then you get your tickets, you keep them, and then you sell 7 or 8 of the games. You sell the preseason games, you sell 8 of them, you go up for one. It's not easy to get to it, and it basically means you get to go to a game for free each year. That's maybe what Titans fans can do. Predators tickets, you know how much they cost on Tuesday night? You know how much you can get into the building for right now?
$12.
Yeah, $16. $16 will get you into the building. And I don't care if you're University of Alabama football, Tennessee Titans football, or Nashville Predators. When tickets start to go for that amount of money below face value, things get to change. So I don't think that's happening with the Titans. The NFL is, again, a little bit more insulated from apathy financially, to your point about the ticket sales. But I don't – if you finish with 3 of those stadiums like they had on Sunday, that's how it looks, and then you finish that bad, like there's a ton of pressure on this front office and this coaching staff going into the offseason. So I don't know what progress looks over the next
owner.
year. And the owner, yeah, well, if owners feel pressure, I don't know. What is, I don't even know how to describe progress other than Levis having one big game and like quieting all the questions about him going into the offseason. I don't even know how to describe it.
They still can find some balance. I mean, Indianapolis is bad. Jaguars are bad. And the Bengals, quite frankly, I don't know that they can defend the Bengals, but Bengals are not good either. They can
score like crazy.
Yeah, they could score like crazy, and the Titans can't. So it'd be hard pressed. I would imagine the spread is big already, but it's the NFL kind of thinking. It would be very NFL-ish for them to bounce back from these 2 weeks and beat the Bengals.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There's not a lot to hope for here. There's not a lot to hang their hat on. And again, I think and the other thing, I said I think the biggest deal of the offseason is Callahan really going to school, and that's going to be behind the scenes. Yeah. So we're not going to know much about what's happening there. So I think a very quiet offseason in terms of one of the biggest developments that I see.
I don't have any actual data for this, but I'd be curious to see if you had any opinion off the top of your head. We maybe can look. Maybe this might be a perfect conversation for Nick Suss and Geek Corner on Thursday mornings, which we do on Thursday mornings on a football show. For there to be 8 teams with only 3 wins or fewer and 10 losses or more, with still 4 games to go in the season, it strikes me as an imbalanced season in the NFL.
All right. Haves and have-nots. There's not a lot of middling teams.
Right. It doesn't feel like, I think you said the Colts are terrible. I would agree with that, but they're like 6-7. Like they got to change. They're like 1 game out of the wild card. So I don't know. Like it does feel like there's a lot of really bad teams in the NFL this year. Is maybe what I'm getting at.
Yeah, if the Colts somehow find a way to be a wild card, it is the biggest testament since 2021 when they came up with this stupid plan to have 7 teams in the playoffs, as to why there shouldn't be 7 teams in the playoffs.
I don't mind 7. I don't mind.
One team having a bye is so imbalanced, and it throws everything off because the 7th team shouldn't be in. So then the 7 and 2 matchup is lopsided, and everything's thrown off by a game. It was perfectly fine the way it was, and then they had the money grab.
Oh, of course. Just like college football. Nelson says there's nothing to hang a hat on, I believe is what he's saying. We're at least 5 years away from being meaningfully competitive, and that's more likely than not with a new head coach and general manager. I pray for a new owner, but okay, first of all, Nelson, I know you're going through it right now, and I know you're in your feelings, and that's okay. It was a bad game, bad day. The NFL is so much faster than 5 years in general. It just is. You mentioned all the coaches that only won 4 games in their first season. We've used this example a lot. Dan Campbell, 4-19-1 in his first 2 years, before about a year and a half until it clicked, and then all of a sudden the Lions went on a run. So it's even been worse than that for recent coaches. It can happen really, really fast. Is it going to happen with this GM and this coach and this quarterback? I don't know.
If only they could get a Dave Tepper to come in and save them. I mean, everybody thinks a sale of the team would be the thing, and completely ignore the fact that that one of the teams sold most recently turned worth.
Yep. All right. So Nelson says, fine, maybe 5 years is too long. No, I'm not comparing. He says Brian Callahan is not Dan Campbell. That's not my comparison. I'm just using Dan Campbell as an example of a historically bad franchise going through some adversity with a new coach who a lot of times, Paul, I don't know if you remember, like there were a lot of like punchlines about Dan Campbell press conferences.
Yeah, Dan Campbell should be on my list, which was not perfect. He was a 4-win first-year coach.
Yeah. And so I think it was like 0-7 or something like that to start the next year. Either way, it was 4-19-1, that tie in there. But I'm not suggesting that Brian Callahan is going to be Dan Campbell. I'm just saying he was kind of a punchline based on his personality and the way he acted and his record. And now everyone looks at the personality and the way he acts in the record, and we have a lot of
love it.
glowing reviews. Yeah, love it.
Kneecap biting opening press conference was a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great companies that are not a joke here in town in Nashville, locally owned and operated, and supporting all you great folks in Middle Tennessee. What you got coming up for the good folks on paulkuharsky.com?
Well, I pushed back something on Harold Landry that I was working on last week, so we'll see that sometime this week. Mike Herndon Wednesday, and
how's he doing these days? Is he okay?
Yeah, I think he's doing just fine. Still cranking it out. So come join paulkuharsky.com if you're not a member. A lot of good original and creative news and analysis. Check it out.
If you are a Nashville Predators fan and you are waiting to hear news about the head coach, make sure you subscribe to lowerbroadhockey.com. I know a few of you are already subscribed over there. Myself, Adam Vingan, Emma Lingen as well. So a little collection of folks doing some work trying to cover the Preds. So we'll be all over the stories right now with Andrew Brunette. And, of course, SEC Football Live with myself and Stephen Godfrey. If you care about what's going on with college football as the 12-team playoff gets underway here in a few weeks, make sure you check that out. I mentioned the Thursday edition of the Geek Corner episodes of a football show, myself and Nick Suss of the Tennessean, and then all the other great shows, of course, across the Full 40 Sports Network covering your Tennessee Titans, Music City Audible, the Hot Read podcast, the Paul Kuharsky podcast, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of great stuff, good folks doing good, smart work around a team. So if you do not want to go to the stadium, understandably so, still a lot of good content for you out there, so make sure you check it out. Sinkers and Shotgun Willie's, paulkuharsky.com. I think that's everything, right? And thanks to everybody and all you guys who showed up and who are in the comment section. Rate, review, subscribe. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. For Paul, I am Braden. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
See ya.